am muted and I have been rusty since we have been off for a couple of weeks. So I need to ease back into things. I'm starting to realize.
You were touring around Europe having a great vacation. I was lazing around. I've forgotten how to do this. You've forgotten how to do this.
It always takes a little bit to get back into the swing of things. So we're going to ease our way into it with one episode discussion of My Adventures with Superman tonight, not to overwhelm us too much after our big break.
We're just like dipping a toe in.
we took a fairly significant vacation, I guess.
I don't remember. Where should I look? Do I speak into the microphone? It doesn't make sense.
Although I will admit I have missed podcasting, so I'm very glad to be back at it. So we are going to be talking about My Adventures with Superman Season 2, Episode 7, Olsen's 11. So if you are watching with us and hanging out with us in the chat, feel free to share your thoughts about that episode. Morgan, do you have the doc? I sent it quite late. Okay, good. It sounds like we are ready. And so let's go ahead and get started, and we'll officially get talking about the episode.
McGurk! I love typing.
Not mess with my Google Docs, Meeksy.
Supergirl Radio is going live every night of the week. How do you like it? Is becoming a human burrito a plus or a minus? I don't know. It does seem snug.
I mean, they say you are what you eat.
Kira. I love that.
So I do a podcast called Supergirl Radio, and one of our segments is Lena Luthor, Boardroom or Ballroom, because
she looks like a boss in this coat.
Nasty Luthor like a different Luthor? It's not just Lena being mean?
No.
Helen Slater here. So fun to know that you're hosting a podcast called Supergirl Radio.
Yes! Welcome to Supergirl Radio, your source for all things related to the character of Kara Zor-El. My name is Rebecca Johnson.
I'm Maureen Glennon.
And we are live and wired on the DC TV Podcast YouTube channel and the Supergirl Radio Facebook page to discuss the Season 2 episode of My Adventures with Superman titled Olsen's 11, a play on Ocean's 11 and some heist-type movies in that genre. This was kind of a heist episode, so I'm pretty excited to talk about it. I should preface, just before we get into the discussion, Supergirl Radio took a couple of weeks off. I went to Ireland on vacation, so we had to kind of shut the podcast down for a little bit. So that I could travel overseas. And so I just want to put a warning that I have not gone past this episode. I know the season.
Neither have I.
The season, I believe Season 2 has already ended, but I did not cheat and go forward. So I'm watching. So we are watching the episodes as we discuss them.
And Max was tempting me. It's like, oh, look at a new episode of My Adventures with Superman. And I was like, no, Max, no, I simply cannot cheat on the podcast this way. So I'm coming in fresh, but I also after episode 7, I know nothing.
Yeah, so same.
Keep that in mind, chat. Chat.
So we are going to be trying to discuss it as if we were watching it as they were coming out. So good to know that we're on the same page. You could have gone ahead. I wouldn't have faulted you for it.
I felt too guilty, honestly. I went to push the button on episode 7 a week after you were gone. And I was like, I shouldn't do it.
Well, I think it probably does add a little more surprise to things as we discuss it.
I like the week by week schedule too. I think it's fun. And just because I'm not doing it the right weeks it was released doesn't mean I can't still experience the magic.
Exactly. So we are going to be discussing the Season 2 Episode 7 episode titled not Ocean's 11, Olsen's 11, because this is Jimmy Olsen's 11. But I don't think there were actually 11 people on the team.
No, there definitely weren't.
So there was.
Wait, hold on.
We got to count.
Jimmy,
right?
Mala, the brain.
Yeah, right. 4.
Livewire,
Heat Wave.
Heatwave.
And then I think there were 2 other people in the crew.
Yes, like the crew that they didn't know about.
Right, until the end.
But that's still not 11.
Yeah,
That's maximum we can get to is 8.
well, in the chat, this is also a fair comment and question. Zoracious, I believe, is maybe how you say that. The question is, were there even 11 people in Ocean's 11? That's a good question. I'd have to count that up too. If
I don't.
somebody
That's
wants
a
to go
great
back and,
question.
and look at the cast for Ocean's
George
11,
Clooney.
Brad Pitt, Matt
We start just
Damon.
counting.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So, but as far as we know, there were maybe possibly 8 people in Olsen's 11. So we'll just go with Olsen's 11 because it sounds cooler, and that's the title of the episode. So the max description for this one reads, quote, Lois and Jimmy recruit mercenaries and mad scientists to help them steal a spaceship out from under the nose of Task Force X, exclamation point, unquote. So this was a heist episode to steal a spaceship to go rescue Superman, essentially. So, Morgan, what did you think about this plan?
Foolproof, obviously. Listen, he's up there in the space, so you need a ship to get there. So
Sense.
following Lois that full way through. I do feel very bad for Jimmy. Because he's back down to sort of the financial equivalent of inbox zero. His net worth is nothing again. So I hope that he enjoyed that period of being rich while he could, and he doesn't look back on, say, how much ice cream he bought on that one date as a mistake.
He did buy that yacht, though. I assume that that's still his, that he can still use it.
Sell that yacht. Some financial advice from us to him. Probably he should sell the yacht.
There's going to be a lot of upkeep, a lot of maintenance, a lot of, I assume, takes gas. I don't know. What
sell the spaceship on the black market after they're done.
Do you think it's better that, so Jimmy Olsen's net worth has gone down to 0. He this episode he just spent it all, and the reason that he does it, I think, is actually very kind-hearted. It's very selfless in that way. He has a lot of money, but he's very selfless. He spends all the money so that they can make this plan happen and get Superman and their friend Clark back. So essentially what happens is Jimmy is willing to pay Livewire and Heatwave because they need some help stealing a spaceship. And he's initially going to pay them $500,000. He writes it out to cash, writes out a check out to cash for $500,000. And then his net worth goes down to $2 million, $2,001,089. And then when Livewire says that she needs to see more zeros to do the job, Jimmy's net worth goes all the way down to 0. So essentially, Jimmy is willing to give everything he has, literally everything down to the last dollar, to get Clark back. And he's willing to pay them around $2,500,000.
But the thing is that like Livewire and Heatwave are going to live beautifully on like a desert island somewhere. So that's great for them.
They were already living pretty large with that big apartment and the mahogany. I feel like they were doing pretty well.
Also true. It's like maybe they didn't need all of the money. But you know what? Good for them. This is an episode about love of all kinds. And they love that money.
So I hope they do something good with it. Probably not, but maybe
I don't think that's likely.
It for something good. It came out of a good place that Jimmy wanted to save his friend Clark. So even though he did not use his money wisely at all at any stretch during this season, that one was probably the best decision that he made so he could save his friend. So what did you think about the return of podcast favorites, Monsieur Milah and the Brain?
Oh, so excited to have them back. Loving them. I like that we learned about their journey while they were gone. I like that it turns out that Jimmy has been hanging out with them this whole time,
Did they get brunch on the weekends?
getting brunch on the weekends. Jimmy's such a pal. I love this version of Jimmy. Like, of course he would get brunch with Mr. 𝘼𝙪 and the Brain. What does the Brain eat, do you think?
I don't know, but the Brain, it looks like in the animation. So one of the things I did like about these flashbacks is the animation style changed to
Like
more
the little
like a
cutout animation. Yeah, it's
so it
cute.
was much more it was cutesier, I guess. And in the animation, the Brain does hold a fork and a knife.
Yeah, it does force you to ask some questions that I don't think we're ever going to get answers to about like what the Brain is up to. What do you think the Brain's like go-to brunch order is? Do you think the Brain is like a sweet or savory bruncher?
Oh, definitely savory. I feel
Oh,
like.
really?
Yeah,
Yeah. I think Mr. 𝘼𝙪, I think he is a sweet bruncher. I think
I
he's
agree
getting
with that.
like a crepe or something.
Yes. Yeah, with a banana. Like one of
Yeah.
those banana chocolate ones.
Exactly. I think that's probably his go-to order. You're probably right. The Brain's going savory.
Yeah. The Brain does not sound like a sweet character here. But yeah, I like the continuity of these episodes that Jimmy befriends them in season 1, and they develop this relationship. And when Jimmy needs some people who can create unstable black holes or portals, he can call on them as his friends. So I'm glad to know that he did this in this scenario, and it was beneficial to them.
Yeah, I also really liked hearing about what they had been up to since we saw them last. That they had sort of jumped around into different realities, but in every reality they met their own version of Mr. 𝘼𝙪 and the Brain, and none of them were excited to see them.
Well, I mean, if they were in each dimension creating unstable black holes, probably was not great.
That's true. Their track record in the black hole realm is not great. Admittedly, not great. I did like the detail where they fought another version of Mr. 𝘼𝙪 and the Brain, and that version of Mr. 𝘼𝙪 had like a little hat on, and at the end, our version of Mr. 𝘼𝙪 stole the little hat. I thought that was really funny. But yeah, they've been gallivanting around, but they realize that there's no place like home to make their unstable black holes.
Yes. So glad to see that they came in clutch, helped steal the spaceship. Although not I mean, they did. I think they got the spaceship launched. But part of the heist, so that they do the heist, here's our plan, here's how we're going to make it happen sort of sequence. And the thing that the Brain was responsible for was to loop the video. So they weren't going to get caught. And the one thing that failed was the looping video.
I don't want to be too harsh on the Brain. He is just a sentient brain. But it does feel like if you have one job and you do it poorly, that's like not great.
He blames it on updated technological stuff.
Doesn't blaming something on updated technological stuff sound a little familiar to you personally, Rebecca?
Oh yes,
having gotten swept up in that the Microsoft crowd, what was it?
CrowdStrike. Yes.
CrowdStrike.
Yeah. So that does hit a little close to home now that you mention it. For people who don't know, on the day of the global outage, worldwide affected 911 calls and hospitals and supermarkets and news media and flights and all this kind of stuff. And flights. I was with my family flying Delta from Dublin to JFK.
And Delta was like the worst hit too.
Delta was the worst hit.
Like canceling flights.
So I'll make a long story short. We got up at I got up at 4 or 4:30 that morning to get ready to go to the airport, to be at the airport by around, we left at 6 and we were ready to go. We got through customs because in Dublin, you can do customs on the Irish side before you come back to America. We got through customs. We did have a question about one of the customs guy because he was like fiddling with his computer. And we're like, what's his deal? What's going on with the computer? And that was our first sign that something was not right.
It's like one of those zombie movies where somebody coughs.
Yes. And so we get through customs. And we're like hanging out, kind of eating, a little bit of breakfast before the flight. We're ready. It said on time on the board. And then we go to the gate and we see that the flight is delayed. And we're like, okay, maybe it's just like an hour. It'd be fine. So we go back and we kind of hang out. And we keep seeing these people that we had previously seen leave to go to their gate come back and reverse back. And we're like, why do they keep coming back? Turns out, long story short, we changed gates 4 times. Then our flight was delayed 6 hours. But we did get to take off. So we were able to fly out of Dublin into JFK. And then because Delta couldn't rebook us to come home for another like 2 days, we ended up just figuring out a solution to come back home on Southwest. So Southwest saved the day. So with technological mishaps, with updates, I don't know. It felt a little. It was making my conspiracy theory part of my brain really start firing off.
I like that we managed to avoid Y2K, only to kind of like push it down the line about 20 years.
It finally happened. It happened.
We did it, you guys. We Y2K'd.
It was miserable, and I think they're still dealing with some of the ramifications of it. But yes, now that you mention it,
so maybe the brain isn't that far off.
I feel like if your name is the brain, you should be above that, though.
But remember Brainy in Supergirl and how he was always being outsmarted by other people, and then know that like maybe like your greatest strength is also your greatest weakness.
So never let someone nickname you the brain because it's
true.
a lot to live up to. Yes. Okay. Well, before we move on, let's hop into the chat and see if there are any comments that we need to address. Let's see. New Rachel says it's so funny that we see this version of Jimmy going out for brunch when I think there was a mention of James and Supergirl getting brunch with someone that we didn't see. Wait, hold on. Refresh my memory here. Is the comment saying that James would go out to brunch with somebody we never met?
Did James have friends besides? I'm so offended. I'm like, what? He had Kara, he had Win, he had Car, he had Win.
I would like to think he invited people over to the house under his desk.
Yeah.
For brunch.
He was like, nobody ever really goes out to brunch with me because they say, oh, it's so small under the desk. But like, sorry, I'm not a great host. They
did have brunch. The Super Friends would go out for brunch sometimes. One time they had brunch on the top of Car's apartment. So with the ice cream dress.
That's true.
With Lena and the ice cream dress.
Rachel says there was a mention of James and Brainy getting brunch together. I think it was in season 4, episode 15.
Oh,
maybe that's maybe that was the ice cream dress episode.
Maybe so. I would like to think that they went out to brunch. What would they talk about at brunch together?
That is puzzling, frankly. Electra WWF says, but we never actually saw any of these brunches.
Yeah, I just remember the brunch on the rooftop of Car's apartment. That's the only one I kind of remember.
I also see Carrie in the chat says, well, in Supergirl, the ladies did have brunch with the super ladies from the other shows. So there's a lot of brunch going on in Supergirl in general. A lot of Belgian waffles just going around, a lot of mimosas.
X in the chat thinks that Monsieur Mallah would eat banana muffins.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that is a good one. I think that is very doable. Let's see. Carrie thinks that maybe the answer to Jimmy's money problems is that maybe Mallah and the Brain are going to eventually give Jimmy a bag of money they swiped in their gallivanting.
That would be very convenient for him.
I think they do owe him maybe a little bit.
It works because like he gave up his money because of friendship and also obviously reckless spending, but mostly friendship. And so it would be great for him to get back some money due to friendship.
I agree. I think that is a good way to go. Let's see if there's anything else. Let's see. A lot of people talking about brunch.
I see Rachel said, I think the other versions of them, meaning 𝙈𝙮 and the Brain, were references to their comic appearances.
Ooh, that is a cool thought. I'll have to dig back
would be
into that.
really
I did
fun.
not do that. So that is really cool. All right. Well, okay. So we talked about the mission, people who were involved, Livewire, Heatwave get recruited for this stealing of the ship in Star Labs and going up into space with Monsieur Malat and the Brain. On a deeper level, Morgan, what did you think about the motive behind wanting to go to space? Lois is feeling pretty bad that she kind of, I mean, essentially broke up with Clark. So now she wants to rescue him to rectify that situation. What do you think is going on with Lois?
I liked Lois's story in this one where she was like, I got really scared of, of basically this relationship not going well, and I figured I would just end it before, anything else would have the chance to do it. And now I regret it, obviously, because he's kidnapped up in space. And I think the fact that her story is so understandable that it really wins over a lot of people in this episode, including Monsieur Malat and the Brain. They're like, I'm down. It's for love. But also Livewire and Heatwave that were like, you know what? We were just going to leave you to take the heat. But then it was like, love, man, I was like, that's really, I like that her reason, they all kind of heard her reasoning and how sad she was about how things went, because I especially didn't like that in the previous episode, in episode 6, that she broke up with him sort of out of nowhere. And I think that this episode really redeems that episode for me in terms of her being like, I don't know why I did that, and I feel bad about it, and now I'm never going to be able to make it right. And like all the other characters being like, I mean, we've all done something stupid for love. You go, girl, you get your man in that stolen spaceship. Who amongst us?
I did think, and I may be reading a little bit into this, but Livewire tells Lois love is not for cowards. And I thought that was a little bit of a thematic element in this episode that I thought really covered multiple character storylines and multiple character interactions and dynamics. And I thought that was a really nice theme to throw into this episode, especially because if you think about love, you kind of have to make yourself vulnerable and you have to leave yourself open to another person. And that is a daring thing that you have to do. That's not something that a coward would do, to put yourself in that situation. So I actually enjoyed that line. I thought that was a good way to make a through line between Lois, between Livewire, between Malat and the Brain, all of those, even Jimmy and Kara, possibly.
That's true.
Possibly. So I liked that through line that they used. In my interpretation, that line is a way to connect all those characters in their storyline. So I really enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah, I like that line a lot. I also, when talking about Jimmy and Kara, I like that moment in the spaceship where he's trying to convince Lois, sort of throughout the episode, but that Kara, think of Kara as being just like Clark, but without any of the support that allowed Clark to be a functional person and not a little bit crazy. And then it comes out sort of at the end that he's like talking about like he's like, oh, when we got ice cream, when we did that, and we did that, and
we watched the sunset together.
Did you go on a date? I'm so offended. I thought that was such a funny moment to end it right before like the big dramatic end of the episode,
which is the reveal that Kara has happened upon their spaceship.
Yeah, and I really like the structure of these two episodes as being like, in the previous episode, we go with Clark and Kara and we see what's going on with them. And then we end with Kara bumping into Jimmy and Lois's spaceship. And you notice Monsieur Malat and the Brain, you're like, what?
Tell me that story.
And then the next episode is like, I will tell you that story. And I really like that structurally, that they're like, oh, don't worry. We're gonna tell you what they've been up to and how they got this spaceship. Don't think we're gonna gloss over that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that Lois is going to have to overcome is the Kara problem. Because all she has seen of Kara so far is violence and being an evil Kryptonian in her eyes. So much so that Lois brings the green kryptonite with her to stop the alien threat that Kara poses to them. But now that they've had this conversation, Lois and Jimmy, about Kara and the sunsets and the ice cream, I think Lois might hopefully change her mind about what she thinks about Kara and maybe being willing to hear her out. Of course, that story is going to be a lot longer for Lois because Kara, I don't know if she can even explain herself because we don't know. I mean, has Brainiac brainwashed her or mind wiped her so much that she can't remember? Does she remember Clark? Does she remember having
that's
those interactions?
right.
So I'm still kind of waiting on an answer as to what she remembers or does she remember Jimmy? I don't know. So
No.
those are I guess going to be answered as we continue to go along. But for Kara not to even remember that she found out what she had done. So there's going to have to be an explanation for Lois, but can Kara even do that for herself? I don't know.
Yeah, I do like the through line through the season of Lois not really trusting Kara and kind of being down on Kara. And I think it'll be a really interesting way to, especially in the next episode, I would assume, see how those two characters interact when they finally get to like talk to each other. Because before we even met Kara, Lois was like, I don't think you should get in touch with your cousin. Sounds like a bad idea. And like she kind of ended up being a little bit right, which is a bummer. Maybe not a bad idea, but it hasn't gone well so far.
Not so far, no.
Not so far. So I'll be interested to see like when Kara and Lois actually have a conversation, what that's like, and if Kara starts to change Lois's mind on this whole situation.
So I guess we'll find out pretty soon in the next episode, given that the cliffhanger, if I remember correctly, is Kara sort of catching their spaceship. So she's right near them. So we'll get to see what interaction they have, hopefully in the next episode. The other thing I think we need to touch on with the alien threat is that Lex Luthor is working on something called Project M. And Morgan, I was curious as to what you thought Project M was about.
I don't know. Is Project M just those machines?
Yeah, like the robots, I think, that were like trying to stop the ship from launching.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's what that was about. That was the place in the episode where I felt the most rusty, honestly, in that like, oh yeah, I haven't watched this in like 3 weeks. That's not great. But yeah, I think it's I see X in the chat says Project M is for Metallo.
That's what I was kind of thinking because the robots have like a little space in the chest area that would be great for kryptonite. And Lex does say, what is his line? He says something about how he is, quote, back engineering an alien substance into a new type of power source, which sounds like he is utilizing green kryptonite.
Ooh.
So I think it's probably M for Metallo. That's what I'm thinking, but I'm not sure.
I think you're probably right with that. Yeah, I thought it was an interesting that like in the beginning of the episode, things aren't going well for Lex. It seems like or good old Alex, because it seems like hasn't done enough in time, and they're kind of losing patience with him. But then, even though they do make it out with the spaceship, his suits show a pretty good showing. And so Waller is pretty impressed with what the suits can do, and is like, all right, go ahead. You've got my full support, which was funny because Slade is a little bit like, oh, now I got to clean up. I like the idea of like of Wilson and Lex is sort of like almost sibling-esque for the attention and and kind of needling each other.
Yeah, I think they like Mandy is like the mom,
Our girl.
yeah, and the two of them are competing for her affection. Now, just as a side note, did you know who is voicing Deathstroke?
I don't think so.
Chris Parnell.
What?
I did not realize that
A
until
very funny bit of casting.
Dr. Spichemin
Dr. Leo Spichemin
from 30 Rock.
Well, there's no way to know how the human body works. It's so funny. I've been watching like in bits and pieces. I've been rewatching 30 Rock, and he's so good. He's so funny in that show.
Yeah, I would not have looked at Chris Parnell and would be like, Deathstroke.
You have a real Deathstroke energy to me.
But he's been doing a great job.
He has been.
I just realized that today, and I was like, oh, Chris Parnell, what?
Oh my God, that's so funny. And now I'm gonna be listening for it in like the next episode.
You might hear it. I think you'll hear it. It's not quite Leo Spichemin, but it's he comes through a little bit.
That's so good.
If people listening or in the chat have never watched 30 Rock, you really should give it a go because it is fantastic.
One of the all-time great comedies.
One of the all-time great TV shows. Okay. The other thing that I wanted to mention with Lex and Project M, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this because I thought it was a little weird. So this episode starts off with Amanda Waller at a podium, and she's addressing the citizens of Metropolis. And I wondered why.
Yeah.
Why is she doing that? Is she the mayor now? Is she the government? Is she the president? What gives her the right to get on camera and address the citizens of Metropolis and talk to them about these these alien threats and what she's planning to do with them? I thought that was really kind of bizarre.
Yeah, I also had questions about that when the episode started. Basically your exact same questions. I was like, oh, is she the governor? Is she the mayor now? Like, what's happening? Like, isn't there like a political figure that should be making these announcements? And also she later on goes on to a what looks like a talk show or a news broadcast. And the journalist is like, well, we have some footage. And she's like, you're not supposed to have that. And also take him away. And I was like, people are like more concerned about this martial law that this random person they've never heard of before.
She invokes martial law. And I was like, what gives you the right to do this?
Like, even if you could believe that like she would just like come in and be like, martial law, everybody. Like, could you imagine if some person you'd never heard of in your town just like came on TV and was like, it's martial law, everybody? I feel like your first question would be like, who are you? I don't know you. But I guess Metropolis just rolled with it.
A lot of stuff
now.
A lot of stuff has happened in Metropolis lately, and
people are just like, all right.
Yeah, I also thought that talk show was strange because the reporter or the host, whoever it was, says that they've obtained their own footage of the Superman Supergirl fight. Well, she's not Supergirl, I guess. The Superman Kara fight. And then that's what she says, it's confidential. It's like, well, not necessarily if that's footage that they happen to obtain from somewhere.
But it was also like a lot of people saw it, so there's only so much of a lid you can keep on this, Mandy. People have eyes.
Like if that was just footage from some Joe Schmo on the street who had recorded it with his cell phone, his mobile phone, that's how can that be confidential? I don't know. Unless I guess maybe they had taken it for an investigation or some kind. I don't know. But I just think the Amanda Waller stuff is really pushing the limit here. I
was like the plausibility of this stuff is not is not that realistic. Not that, like, listen, not that, again, we were talking earlier in this episode about what a anthropomorphized brain would eat at brunch. So I do understand that you have to sort of do a lot of hand waving, but this, for some reason, not the brunch thing, was a bridge too far for me. I was like, I don't know, like, why are they just letting her get on the TV? Rachel in the chat also makes a really funny point where she says, isn't Amanda the head of a secret government organization? That doesn't seem very secret to me.
Yeah, she's running Task
Good point.
Force X, which I would think that's your lane, Amanda Waller. That's your thing. That's what you do. You are working in the government. You do not speak to the people.
Do you think she just has all of the local government somewhere, like, tied up in a closet?
I'm not putting it past her. She, like, arrested that reporter guy on the talk show. So I guess she has all the authority to do all of the things. So I'm glad that you were also semi bothered by that, because it was weird.
I was like, it's weird what I choose to be bothered by on this show. It's like back when you watch Supergirl, and I was like, the real estate prices must be insane here. Did everybody get insurance? And this is sort of the same thing where I was like, oh yes, they're stealing a spaceship, but what about the Mandy thing? I can't.
What gives her the authority?
What gives her the authority? I see in the chat, Mind the Gap says, Amanda Waller happens to be the main villain of the current DC Comics event. It's kind of a leap from her old days in the Ostrander Suicide Squad. So it seems like, yeah, I mean, usually Amanda Waller is at least a morally gray character. So seeing her as a villain doesn't feel like much of a stretch. My question is mostly like, how did she get who gave her the authority?
Where are the leaders of
where is anyone?
What is
who might be like, excuse me, ma'am?
Because if I read more into it, not only did she get on to, like, how did she somehow maneuver the broadcast? Like, how is she arranging for a broadcast to happen anyway?
Yeah, I don't. This is like a Cat Grant. This is like a Supergirl has access to every channel situation all over again. And at least that was more realistic, because you could be like, well, we don't know what Catco is even, so it could be that
Catco is many things. Yeah,
you know, the Catco emergency broadcast arm of the company
that operates with one commercial camcorder that Wynn bought at Best Buy.
Just one camera that, like, zooms in and out, and pretty much that's it. I guess Amanda Waller got that camera, and now she has that power.
Now she can broadcast her own emergency declaration.
She's unstoppable now.
Well, those are kind of all of my thoughts about the episode. Morgan, is there anything else that you wanted to discuss or had questions about?
No, I think we covered most of this stuff. I really liked this one because I do love a good caper, a good crime caper, if you will. I like that we got, like, the walkthrough, like, very traditional. I like that they really did, if they were going to do like a Ocean's 11 kind of play on this, they really did a lot of the things of the genre. Like, they looped the camera, and they had like a run, like they all had to run, and there were doors that closed. But I really liked in the
fingerprints to open up
the fingerprints. They had to trick somebody. But I really like that they did, like, the initial run through of the plan, like what the plan was supposed to be, so that you understood that everything was going wrong. I always find it helpful when they're like, this is what the plan is, and then you're like, oh, already it's falling apart. Falling apart so quickly.
That is a hopeful. The one thing that I thought was good about that sequence where you actually got to see the plan in motion is that the plan fell apart, I think, initially when they realized the security guard was working a double shift, and so they didn't have the time to use the fingerprints to go through the door. And I thought Jimmy was actually very resourceful in that moment, because he did not want Livewire to hurt this dude. And so
she definitely was going to.
She wanted to. She was warming up for it.
She was gonna electrocute that man.
He was getting charged up to do it. But he actually, I thought, was really smart. He went back to what the idea was of his backstory, that he was going to visit his grandmother in the Silver Age nursing home, I believe it was.
I
And so
did like
he
the Silver Age nod there too.
yeah, true, true. I didn't think about that. I was just thinking about the elderly, the
Oh, I like you know what? It's so funny.
Silver Age comics then.
I didn't think of the opposite. I was just like, "Oh, what a fun nod to the comics." I didn't think of the fact that they're like silver, like the
Yeah,
hair.
silver, like senior citizens as they are. So I like that Jimmy understood the story of the security guard and used it in order to essentially save his life. He did what he did to make sure that that man didn't get hurt. So I thought that that was really great. And I, like you, I think that this show does a really good job of picking a genre and playing into that genre as much as they can, while still retaining a sense of this is a Superman TV show, and playing in the world of DC Comics. So I think this series does a really good job of that, whether it's anime, whether it's a heist movie feel. It's they really understand these genres that they are aiming to utilize, and they do it to great effect. So I thought this was a delightful episode, even if the Amanda Waller stuff was something I could not wrap my my brain around.
A bridge too far for both of us.
But I thought it was a fun little heist episode that got us to the next part of the story. So I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes from here, especially the more we get into more Kara stuff. It seems like we're pushing to have more Kara interaction. So I'm very excited about that. So I guess if those are all of our thoughts, I guess that's going to do it for this episode of Supergirl Radio. These episodes might be a little shorter than our typical 2-hour affair.
Sometimes we just like an episode and there's not that much to deep dive on, and there's not a lot of real estate content in the episode.
So we are going to wrap it up early. So that's going to do it for this episode of Supergirl Radio. If you would like to contact us, you can post a comment on our website at supergirlradio.com, which is updated since I've been in Ireland. So try to make sure that that is updated and correct. You can email us at supergirlradio@gmail.com. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on X and Instagram, all at Supergirl Radio. If you like what we do, we encourage you to give us a rating and write us a review on Apple Podcasts. And Supergirl Radio is part of the DCTV Podcast and Multiverse of Color networks. You can hang out with us as we go live and wire on Tuesday nights, sometimes Wednesdays, like this week, because we had to shift some things around in the schedule. But typically we are live and wired on Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern on the DCTV Podcast YouTube channel and the Supergirl Radio Facebook page. DCTV Podcast also has a TeePublic store. So if you are in need of some new DC TV or DC Comics related t-shirts, tank tops, sweatshirts, magnets, tote bags, pins, phone cases, pillows, or stickers, go to supergirlradio.com and click on the TeePublic store link at the top of the page.
And since this episode of My Adventures with Superman featured Leslie Willis, aka Livewire, we have some Livewire designs in the DCTV Podcast TeePublic store that we would love to suggest.
It is convention season. We're starting to ramp up to con season. San Diego Comic-Con, I believe, is
happening right now.
Yeah,
well,
it's
not. I mean, I guess this is like the pre-day.
yes, it is. It is happening. Dragon Con is coming up. I think New York City Comic-Con is usually kind of right after that.
Yeah.
If you've got conventions you need to go to and you need more merch, new merch to show off when you're at your cons, the DCTV Podcast TeePublic store is a great place to do that. And we've got some cool, we've got one main live and wire design, but you can get it on a t-shirt, you can get it on a tote bag, you can get it on a hat if you want to, like a trucker hat. So that's pretty cool. So we've got some stuff in the TeePublic store that you might want to check out. And we would like to thank our legion of super sponsors for supporting the Supergirl Radio Patreon. These people are Michael, Anne-Marie, Yvonne, Nicola, Abby, Miriam, Nicole, Brian, Ethan, Danny, Majuba, Zachary, Annie, and Rachel. So if you would also like to support us, you can go to patreon.com/Supergirl Radio. We're going to be working on some pilot pods coming up, hopefully, and some more reviews and maybe telling some personal stories about some of our travels or whatever we choose to talk about. So we'll be getting back to some Patreon content now that we are back in the swing of things with the podcast. And if you would like to catch up with me, you can follow me on Instagram at the Derby Kid. I've posted a few of my Ireland pictures there. But really, if you want to see more of my travels, you can follow me, and also it's a travel blog, it's like a social media travel blog that I do with my brother called at Oasis Broom on social media. And so you can see some of our travels there. I've got to catch up because of all the global outage and the troubles with the traveling. I got kind of behind, so I'm hoping to catch up on that this week to finish the story of our travels, because we essentially went around the entire country of Ireland. So I'm hoping to do it in order so that you can track our location as we go around Ireland. So if you want to check that out, it's at Oasis Broom. And if you also want to follow me on the platform Vero True Social, I'm at Derby Kid over there, so you can see what I'm watching or listening to there. And if you want to check me out on my personal YouTube channel, you can go to youtube.com/duckmilkprod.
And you can find me on the interwebs at Mojotastic on Twitter and Instagram, and also as a co-host on the Legendary Ladies podcast. We are breaking for this week because it's Comic-Con and Kat and Amy are going. Seems fun. Maybe I'll return one day, but we'll be back next week sometime. And I think we are probably going to just do a Comic-Con episode and talk about what they saw there. They're going to sort of tell me about their experiences, so I too can feel like I was at San Diego Comic-Con, even though I was at home and nowhere near it. So if you want to check that out, you should follow us on all the socials at the Legendary Ladies Pod. And check out, subscribe to the podcast, and then you'll know when there's a new episode.
I feel like they can take you with them, like for real, like physically.
They could. Why can't they just sneak me into a suitcase?
I feel
because I don't have a hotel. Oh, because I don't have airfare. Oh, because I don't have a con pass. Those are all excuses.
Yes, I think so too. Well, that'll be interesting to hear their experiences, and because I've actually never been to San Diego Comic-Con.
San Diego, I went for I want to say 6 or 7 years straight. It was great, but it is huge. It's so intense. Getting into any of the panels is such a thing, which is why I've always kind of wanted to go to Dragon Con, because it seems like it's like a chiller version of it.
It's a little easier to maneuver.
Yeah. The first time you get into a line where you realize at some point, like an hour in, you're never getting into that panel. You're just like, what am I doing here? The one time I got the most annoyed at San Diego Comic-Con was when I was really hungry and I had to stand in a substantial line for an Auntie Anne's pretzel, and I was like, what am I doing? What am I doing here? But it is a very fun convention, so I hope to get back one day, just not this year. Mind the Gap does ask, think we'll see anything about Supergirl?
Oh, maybe. I don't know. I don't know that James. I read something about James Gunn not doing anything for San Diego Comic-Con, which, if that's true, that seems kind of stupid. But yeah,
that feels right though. Because when I stopped going to Comic-Con, it was like the year before the pandemic, so I was like sort of a Cassandra in that way. But but honestly, at that point, like some of the DC and Marvel were both like not doing anything at Comic-Con. They were trying to do their own thing, and I was like, guys, just come back to Comic-Con.
Yeah,
it's Comic-Con, and so you're kind of like superstars there, but I'm not going to your specific weird little convention. I'm just not going to do it. I want you to be where all the other people are. So
we did
come back.
We did try their weird little thing with DC Fandom,
and it was something.
It was something.
It was an experience we all had.
we have episodes on DC Fandom for Supergirl Radio.
If you missed it and you want to know what the experience was like, we have an episode for that. And it's a great primer on why they should go back to San Diego Comic-Con.
I remember remember that being so incredibly frustrating because the website didn't work. The menus didn't
No.
work.
I remember you like playing a game and then like you halfway through it just kind of crapped out.
When I was like, but I'm hitting the home button, but I'm not going home. What am I doing? How do I get around this menu?
I remember asking you like, wait, how do I do this thing though? And you're like, I don't. No one really knows. It's like, oh, good, great marketing.
So, although by the end of the second time, because they did DC fandom twice,
They did.
and I'm kind of missing DC fandom. I think they finally got it on the second year.
They can just continue with it, but still go to Comic-Con because
Yeah.
I want all the little exclusives. I want all my Supergirl tidbits and news. So I hope that they're there, but
I personally feel like it's a missed opportunity not to go.
crazy not to go.
That's give people something,
yeah,
even if
people are
it's
going to
just
show
like
up.
yeah. So I feel like that's a little bit of a missed opportunity. So I don't know if we'll see anything with San Diego Comic-Con, but I hope that maybe something will happen. Oh, or is the ring light okay?
The ring light is fine. Bunsen is here, but he's feeling like he wants a lot of pets.
Yeah, late
so
in the game for the
late in the
podcast.
game, late in the game appearance. He didn't have a lot to say about this one. Honestly, he just kind of liked it. So he was like, you know what? I'll drop by though. My audience obviously would miss me too much if I wasn't here. So here he is.
Well, I'm glad he finally made an appearance. I don't know if we'll see anything at Dragon Con because the Superman movie is shooting somewhere in the
Oh.
Atlanta area. So I
Then
don't
they,
know.
then they have no excuse. They better just
Superman
go.
could show up, but
Mhm.
that's not really the convention where those kinds of things happen. So I don't
I do have
know.
a Superman tidbit in that I saw Twisters, plural,
Yes.
last night, and our future Superman was in Twisters, plural.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Was
he kind of played not like a villainous character, but kind of like a jerk. And I was like,
is
oh,
he like the equivalent of the oh my gosh, what is the guy from The Princess Bride?
yes,
Carrie
Elwes.
Elwes. Is
Kind of, yeah.
he
He's like
essentially that guy?
he's
Yeah.
that
Okay.
character,
Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
basically. And he's like, "Rah, rah, rah." And you're like, that's not how you're supposed to chase a tornado, sir. Anyway, Twisters is great. You should see it.
I'm sure it'll be wholly original and not at all like the original blockbuster classic that it's probably based on.
Yes, it's exactly like the one from the 90s. But if I can sell you on this for a second, Glenn Powell is in it. He's having the Glenn Powell-sance, a real renaissance of his career.
Okay.
And he plays.
Should I know who Glenn Powell is?
You should.
Okay.
But that's okay. He was in that Anyone But You, like rom-com. He was in a Hitman movie that just came out on Netflix. Yes, the Gary Johnson. He was Gary
Yes!
Johnson. You should know who he is.
I should know. Okay, yes. No, I'm
So-
there now.
So he plays, if I can just pitch this to you for a quick second, he plays a YouTube star who chases tornadoes
Amazing.
in a giant cowboy hat. Now, if that doesn't get you more interested,
That
in the-
actually does sell me.
right? Yeah, like these guys are the best. So if I was going to try to pitch somebody on Twisters, plural, I would
Yes.
say Glenn Powell in a cowboy hat on the YouTube live. Does that get you more interested?
That does sell me on it. So I think perfect. Okay, well, I'll have to put that on high priority as I go to the movie theater. Hopefully this weekend. We'll see. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode of Supergirl Radio. But until next time, I'm still Rebecca Johnson.
And I'm still Morgan Glennon. And remember, love is not for cowards.
McGurk! I
Do
love
not
typing.
mess with my Google Docs, Meeksy.
Supergirl Radio is going live every night of the week. How do you like it? Is becoming a human burrito a plus or a minus? I don't know. It does seem snug.
I mean, they say you are what you eat.
I love that.
So I do a podcast called Supergirl Radio, and one of our segments is 𝙈𝙾 𝘼𝙪 Boardroom or Ballroom because
She looks like a boss in this coat.
Nasty Luthor like a different Luthor? It's not just Lena being mean.
Helen Slater here. So fun to know that you're hosting a podcast called Supergirl Radio.
Yeah!